dangerous discourse.
It is not okay, and it has to stop.
From Pennsylvania's governor and other public officials to assassination attempts on President Trump. What's fueling the rise of political violence in the U.S. and holding court?
The tariffs will be in place in the not distant future.
From the trade war to legal battles over the president's immigration policies, the White House plays offense. And
we see the deadliest attacks in this war. Civilians are being killed.
Holy Week celebrations in Ukraine off to a gruesome start. Plus, Christian cause.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, teacher.
CBN News takes you into the heart of the largest humanitarian crisis in the world today. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Well, a terrifying attack on Pennsylvania's governor, raising new fears about political violence in America. Good evening in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. A man is now facing charges after police say he broke into the Pennsylvania governor's residence and set it on fire while Governor Josh Shapiro, his family, and guests were asleep inside. The attack happened early Sunday morning during the first night of Passover, just hours after Shapiro hosted a Seder dinner in the same room that was set on fire. Troopers woke the family and got everyone out safely. No one was hurt, but the damage is extensive. Authorities found gasoline-filled bottles and say the fire was deliberate. 38-year-old Cody Balmer is now facing charges, including attempted murder, aggravated arson, and terrorism. Police say he breached a security fence and had planned to beat the governor with a sledgehammer. Tonight, Shapiro, a devout Jew and prominent Democrat, says he won't be deterred.
I refuse to let anyone who had evil intentions like that stop me from doing the work that I love, stop me from being a leader of this Commonwealth and looking out for all Pennsylvanians.
A police affidavit says the suspect harbored hatred toward Governor Shapiro, but didn't explain why. The FBI is helping in the investigation, and a security review is underway tonight. Okay, joining us now, Nathan Gonzalez, editor and publisher of Inside Elections and a Faith Nation contributor. Nathan, great to have you with us this Monday. Investigators are trying to determine whether this was it was inspired by a political ideology or potentially a hate crime. Fortunately, as we mentioned, Shapiro and his family are fine. They escaped unscathed. But just like with President Trump and his assassination attempt this summer in Butler, things could have gone much differently.
Right. We know it's not random, even if we don't know the specific motivation. I'm sure it was not an accident that it was the governor of Pennsylvania. I don't think we have wrestled with how close we've come to disasters, right? Close to an assassinated governor, close to an assassinated president. I'll include close to assassinated senators or vice president on January 6th. This political violence, no matter which side of the aisle you are on, is not good. And this is not a way that we should solve political differences. And we're very fortunate that it ended, with how it did and not much, much worse.
Oh, definitely. So, Nathan, you travel to congressional districts. Tell us what the mood is under the hood there. Do you sense some of this political violence percolating? What do you see when you go out into just places across the country?
I don't think most Americans are on the verge of setting a governor's mansion on fire or assassinating a political official, but I do think the rhetoric is part of the problem. I think too often we escalate conversations from disagreeing on policy to equating good versus evil, or if I disagree with this person, then they are a criminal or they are a rapist, and we escalate that. And when we escalate that conversation or that disagreement, then we start to justify our actions. Say, well, it's okay to do that because they're evil, or it's okay to do that because they are a criminal or whatnot. And if we don't have the view, we've lost the ability to view even people we disagree with as equals. And I think that is at the core of what's going on.
Yeah, Nathan, in a practical way, how do you think we take down the temperature in America?
I think we have to get to a point where we view people that are different than us, that have different views, as equals. I think one of the problems also is that right now, among some people, empathy is viewed as a weakness. And I think that is that's the complete wrong way to look at it. Empathy should be something that we should all be striving for. And it's really, at this time as we're beginning Holy Week, if you just look at the Last Supper and what Jesus talking to his disciples, he says, they will know you by your love for each other, not because of your disagreements or turning over the tables in the temple. It's about love for each other. And so I think if we're trying to fix the whole system, you're going to feel overwhelmed. But just think about your individual conversations, particularly people either in person or online that you disagree with, and what is the tone of those conversations?
Yeah. Nathan, while I have you here, I do want to ask you a political question. Of course, we don't want to take away at all from the seriousness, the scariness of the situation with Governor Shapiro. But given, politics is your wheelhouse, there's talk that if he handles this well, the silver lining for him here could be, picking up a lot of momentum for a possible 2028 presidential bid. I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, we're a long way away from 2027 and 2028 with that nominating process. I don't think the governor would have wished this upon him and his family in order to push him ahead in some sort of, in the Democratic lineup. I think what's really going for the governor more so than this in that nomination conversation is that he's not from Washington. He's not tied to Washington. He's not a senator. He's a governor, and he's trying to do a good job outside of D.C. And I think that there will be an opportunity for a Democrat who has that outsider profile, maybe even someone who's outside of politics. And so Shapiro is going to be in that conversation before and after this terrible event.
Yeah, and someone who's more moderate in his politics and could appeal to independents. All right, Nathan Gonzalez of Inside Elections, always good to see you. Thank you, Nathan.
Good to see you.
Well, here in Washington, more tariff confusion this week amid mixed messaging from the White House. Late Friday, the Trump administration announced smartphones, computers, and other tech would be exempt from the reciprocal tariffs on China. But Sunday, the president suggested those exemptions are only temporary and said more tariffs are actually on the way. Washington correspondent Caitlin Burke is following the developments. Caitlin, what does the White House, or does the White House rather, have an explanation for this, I guess you could say, zigzag on tech tariffs?
They do, Jenna. They're basically saying everyone misunderstood what the administration meant with the tech exemption. Computers, iPhones, and other tech devices will face tariffs, but they're no longer included in that 145% tariff imposed on other products coming out of China. They'll fall into a new category. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick explained on ABC's This Week.
So what he's doing is he's saying they're exempt from the reciprocal tariffs, but they're included in the semiconductor tariffs, which are coming in probably a month or two. And they're going to have a special focused type of tariff to make sure that those products get reshored.
President Trump also spoke this weekend about those incoming tariffs on semiconductors and announced there will be new tariffs on chips and pharmaceuticals as well.
We want to make our chips and semiconductors and other things in our country. And I will tell you, another one is pharmaceuticals, drugs and pharmaceuticals. We want to make our drugs in this country. And by placing a tariff on the companies that are not in this country, they're going to move into our country.
Meanwhile, China continues to retaliate against Trump's reciprocal tariffs, this morning halting exports of magnets critical to the assembly of American cars and other electronics, from drones to robots. While there are currently no plans for Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping to speak, Xi kicked off a diplomatic tour of Southeast Asia today, presenting China as a force for stability and seeking allies in working around the trade barrier imposed by the U.S. Speaking to reporters this morning, National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett conceded the White House is, quote, concerned about tariffs pushing our allies closer to China. He didn't elaborate on that further, but he did say imposing tariffs on things like chips and semiconductors and pharmaceuticals is a matter of national security, and the president is protecting Americans by doing so. Jenna?
All right, Caitlin, thank you very much. And now to the case of a Maryland man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador and is now locked up in one of the country's most dangerous prisons. Kilmar Abrego Garcia had a court order protecting him from deportation, but he was still put on a plane and sent to a prison in El Salvador, where he remains today. The Supreme Court has called his removal illegal and ordered the Trump administration to facilitate his return. But President Trump and El Salvador's president are pushing back. Today, during a meeting at the White House, El Salvador's president said he would not return Abrego Garcia to U.S. soil.
The question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
Abrego Garcia has no criminal record in the U.S. or El Salvador, despite accusations that he is affiliated with the MS-13 gang. Abrego Garcia denies that claim, and a federal judge said the only allegation against him came from an unverified tip. The Justice Department acknowledged he was deported due to an administrative error, but now says it has no obligation to negotiate Garcia's return, arguing foreign policy decisions rest in the president's hands and not the courts. A hearing in the case is scheduled for Tuesday. Well, a high-stakes antitrust trial is underway in Washington, putting Facebook parent company Meta against the federal government. The Federal Trade Commission says Meta's actions built a monopoly and hurt consumers, and now wants the company broken up. Meta says the deals were legal and that it faces tough competition from TikTok, YouTube, and Apple. CEO Mark Zuckerberg is expected to testify, with the trial likely to stretch into July. The outcome could redefine the future of big tech in America. Coming up, a holy day turned deadly. Russian strikes kill families heading to church. Survivors and church leaders speak out after the break. Welcome back. Holy Week turned tragic in Ukraine, where more than 100 civilians were injured and 34 others killed, including a family of 3 on their way to church for Palm Sunday. 2 Russian ballistic missiles struck the town of Suma. Fire crews rushed to extinguish the flames in buildings and cars. This church was just about 100 yards from where one of the missiles hit. Among the victims, 2 kids, including 11-year-old Maxim and his parents, Mykola and Natalia. The Ukrainian Council of Churches and Religious Organizations condemned the attack and called on, quote, all people of goodwill to pray for the victory of truth and a just peace. European leaders want to impose more sanctions on Russia. The Kremlin claims that it was targeting Ukrainian troops in the area. Well, now to the Middle East, where the U.S. and Iran are engaged in high-stakes nuclear talks after little progress in their first round over the weekend in Oman. Both sides have agreed to meet again this coming Saturday in Rome. Today, President Trump sending this warning if the talks fail.
They can't have a nuclear weapon, and they got to go fast, because they're fairly close to having one, and they're not going to have one. And if we have to do something very harsh, we'll do it.
Meanwhile, the latest round of talks to restore the ceasefire in Gaza and release more hostages ended today with no breakthrough. This as Israeli forces cut off the Hamas stronghold of Rafah from the rest of Gaza. Meanwhile, Orthodox Christians in Gaza gathered to mark Palm Sunday despite waves of Israeli attacks, including a deadly strike on the last fully functional hospital in Gaza City. In Jerusalem, thousands of pilgrims marched with palm fronds along the path they believe Jesus followed on his final entry into Jerusalem before his crucifixion and resurrection. Up next, a war zone escape, a desert journey, and a humanitarian crisis unfolding in real time when Faith Nation returns. The civil war in Sudan is one of the most underreported humanitarian disasters in the world. Millions have been displaced, forced to flee their homes in search of safety. Many have escaped to neighboring Chad, where Christian relief organizations like World Vision are offering life-saving aid. George Thomas takes us to the edge of the Sahara to see their work firsthand.
A grueling journey into one of the world's harshest deserts. 5 flights culminating in a rough landing on a dirt airstrip. The heat hits immediately, a reminder of the unforgiving environment. CBN News joined a World Vision convoy at the southern edge of the Sahara to document what's been described as the largest humanitarian crisis in the world today. Aid workers here help refugees escaping Sudan's brutal war between the country's military and what's known as the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF. Here, the faces of those displaced tell stories of unimaginable loss.
I've been to a number of refugee situations around the world. This is one of the worst I've seen.
For nearly 2 years, the conflict has displaced 14 million people, with some fleeing to neighboring countries like Chad for safety. In the distance there, you will see Sudan. So these are folks who have escaped the war coming into Chad. The last 2 years, close to about 700,000 Sudanese folks, like this gentleman right here, they have come across this border. Chad is just one of several countries today in the region that is providing shelter to hundreds of thousands of Sudanese. At the border, UNHCR worker Mohammed Abakar registers mostly women and children.
When I talk with them, some of them tell me that their husbands were killed. Some of the women say they were raped. They come with just a small sack that has their clothes. They don't even have food to eat.
CBN News met Miriam Ahmed Ishaq crossing the border on a donkey. Her emotions, a mix of relief and sorrow.
I lost all my belongings, all my clothes, the furniture, the utensils. They put fire to my house and destroyed everything.
With more than 60,000 dead, the existing human toll is unimaginable suffering, like that of Maha, who escaped just before RSF troops surrounded her village.
They raped girls in front of us. They killed people in front of our eyes. I didn't think I would survive. The war has killed 2 of my brothers. 1 is missing. We don't know where he is. We don't even know if he's alive or dead.
The true damage is not just in numbers.
The RSF came to our home and shot my husband in front of me. They looted everything, then burned the house down. My husband survived, but it's taking a while for him to heal.
These stories of trauma, loss, and survival echo through the refugee camps. Women expressing to us overwhelming fear of not knowing the fate of loved ones.
My husband is a cattle herder. He went to the market to sell cattle the day the fighting started. That was almost 2 years ago. I've not heard from him since. I don't know if he's dead or alive.
Over 60% of Sudan's population is in desperate need of help, including 16 million children. A UN report states more than 200 children, some as young as 1, have been raped in Sudan within the last year.
This is an example of the fact that this is being used as a weapon of war in Sudan by all parties to the conflict, and no woman or child is safe.
We know that we are all created by God. These are brothers and sisters who are in pain. These are people who have not chosen to be in the conditions they are. I believe that it is our duty to take care of the weakest among us.
World Vision and other agencies serve meals to some 70,000 young Sudanese refugees each day.
This is a program we are implementing in partnership with the World Food Program. We receive these rations, and our team as World Vision are in charge of making sure that the children have cooked and hot meals on a daily basis.
CBN News arrived at a makeshift school as cooks prepared meals. While the food is simple, rice, beans, and oil, for these children, it's the difference between hunger and survival.
This food we are giving them is better than what they are getting in the refugee camp.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, teacher.
The school's principal, himself a victim of the war, says this food program serves as a vital incentive for keeping children in class.
This food support is super crucial. The children enjoy coming to school to study, and because they get meals each day, no students wants to miss class. Attendance is near perfect, and this is good.
As you can imagine, trying to get clean safe and reliable water here in the Sahara Desert is no easy feat. So a couple of months ago, World Vision dug this borehole and is today running about 2.5 miles of piping, transporting this desperately needed water to the main hospital here in Farshana, Chad.
And it means everything. You know, without that water at the clinic, you have women coming to deliver their babies, carrying a bucket of water themselves, or not having enough water because they don't have access.
In Farshana, Chad, we visited one of the only clinics in the area. It's filled with mothers and babies, many battling malnutrition. World Vision's newly installed solar panels also provide electricity, ensuring that this lifeline stays open.
For us, access to water and electricity have been truly paramount.
Despite overwhelming challenges, the strength and resilience of these families offer a glimmer of hope. The quiet love for their children and the hope of returning to Sudan one day keeps them going. George Thomas, CBN News, reporting from the Chad-Sudan border.
Still ahead, a new age of space tourism. Next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, a star-studded crew completes a historic trip to space. The Blue Origin launched an all-female crew into space Monday. The new Shepard rocket blasted off from West Texas in a quick up-and-down trip that lasted about 10 minutes. The rocket was carrying Jeff Bezos' fiancée, Lauren Sanchez, along with other celebrities, including Katy Perry and Gayle King, producer Carrie Ann Flynn, and aerospace engineer Aisha Bowie.
To have a perspective that very few people get to have of Earth. I just feel a renewed connection to everything in life and where we are, and I can't wait to go back out there and pour what I've learned into the world.
And the hope is that this latest wave in space tourism helps clear a path for more people to be able to experience space. It looked like a beautiful day out there in West Texas, and that's going to do it for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.